We know that on average people can save up to £750 a year driving an electric vehicle.
Well, firstly, Minister, thank you very much for letting me be your chauffeur this afternoon. Now, this is a British-built Nissan Leaf that we're in, fully electric, built brilliantly. I'm impressed with the build quality. Built up in the northeast. What experience do you have of EVs? Have you driven many EVs?
So I've had a go at driving an EV, and I mean, obviously I spend a lot of my week down in London, and I get up and down to London on the train and sort of walk and cycle when I'm down there. But sometimes I need to take out the ministerial car to go and do a visit, and I'm glad to say that that's an EV. It's a Jaguar. It's a very quiet and comfortable ride, absolutely ideal really for undertaking our job, and we could I'd be able to listen to my music or listen to conversations very easily. It's very pleasant.
Yes, I should point out we have a couple of guests in the back as well. Hello guys. So you enjoy driving an EV? It's a nice experience for you.
Yeah, when I've used an EV, I've liked it. I think they're responsive to drive, and one of the great things about having a new EV is that it often come with all these safety features, which the driver assistance, which I think obviously can help to make our roads safer. That's got to be a good thing. And
the app that warms up the car when you're cold in the morning. Why does the government want us all to buy EVs then? What are the benefits of EVs?
The greatest proportion of our emissions now comes from transport, and most of that is from road transport, around half of the emissions from cars. So there's a real imperative, if we're going to tackle climate change, cut our carbon emissions, we need to move to electric vehicles. Of course, zero emissions at the tailpipe means it's cutting the dangerous things that are affecting people's health, but they're also great in terms of being quieter. But it's also good for industry. Part of us being a clean energy superpower, that's one of the central pillars of our plan for change. And by the UK being at the forefront, we can get the advantages of moving first and really be at the cutting edge when it comes to automotive and the transition to electric vehicles, which isn't just happening in this country, of course, it's happening globally.
Lots of people are talking about electric vehicles all the time. We had a big crowd there. I know a guy is very interested in his electric cars, where we've just been just a few minutes ago. But there are lots of myths around electric cars. People saying that they don't go far enough, they all burst into flames. Should the government be doing something to help bust those myths?
Well, look, we're working with industry on precisely that matter. There are plenty of people who've got an interest in knocking electric vehicles, but actually they're really good news for people. We know that they're good for the environment. We know that on average people can save up to £750 a year driving an electric vehicle rather than a petrol or diesel car. When you I think people worry about the upfront cost, and they're right that the electric vehicles have been expensive, but the price is coming down all the time. For second-hand electric vehicles, I think 1 in 3 now is less than £20,000 to buy. And of course, if you can charge economically, then you can save a lot of money. The other thing, of course, you'll know this, is that once people drive an electric vehicle, the vast majority of them would never go back. They really enjoy driving them.
When we're all driving EVs, and this is a question somebody just asked me a few minutes ago, will there be enough electricity?
Well, absolutely. When we're planning our electricity future, we know that we need to allow for the fact that many more people will be driving electric vehicles, and that's one of the challenges that we face in the years ahead, but absolutely it's part of our government planning.
You mentioned the values, the benefit of saving cash when you're driving an EV, and a recent EV UK report said that there's a lot of money to be saved from driving an EV. But only really if you have a driveway. Now, what's being done for those people that don't have driveways?
Well, that's precisely what we were doing here in Leicestershire, and talking about the funding that we're putting into the local electric vehicle infrastructure fund to roll out many more public on-street charge points. We've already seen the number of public charge points go up. We're just short of 75,000 public charge points now. That's gone up 35% in the last year, 45% in rural areas, and we need to continue that progress, because people have to know that if they, they're away from home, they can charge, and if they don't have a driveway that they can charge on, they need to be able to park somewhere convenient to them, whether that's their workplace or whether it's outside their house. What some of the things that we are doing, we put out some new guidance to local authorities just before Christmas to enable people to have those cross pavement chargers. So if you don't have a driveway, you can potentially still be charging using domestic electricity at the curbside. But as I say, lots and lots of public charge points going in right now across the country. We think our local electric vehicle infrastructure fund, £381 million, that's going to deliver over 100,000 new charge points, so that people have that confidence that they can make the switch and be able to charge when they need to.
Not a lot of that money is being spent yet. There's a big pot of money there, and part of the problem that we hear a lot is the delays in planning and getting electricity points installed. Is there something government can do to, particularly on the planning side, to speed up the planning?
Yeah, well, we're already doing that by extending permitted development rights, making it easier for the charge points to be installed. And we know that there's a challenge in relation to the grid. And again, I'm working with my colleagues cross government, including with colleagues in the Department for Energy and Net Zero, to try to tackle those challenges to make sure that we can install charge points everywhere where people need them. Because we recognise that we need to be working with industry to ensure that everyone can have the benefits of an electric vehicle. We need to make sure it's easy for consumers to make that switch.
One of the big disconnects that people talk about a lot is the cost of VAT. If I charge at home, I pay VAT on my electricity at 5%. If I charge publicly, as I just have, I'm paying VAT at 20%. That's not fair, is it?
Well, look, you'll know that VAT is in the purview of the Chancellor rather than me at the Department for Transport. People benefit from that reduction in their domestic electricity. We mostly pay 20% on other products generally, but that's something that will be kept under review by government in the future.
Are we committed absolutely from 2030 onwards to ban cars that you actually have to fill up with fuel? Is it plugs only from 2030 onwards?
Yeah, we're clearly talking about the how, but not the if. From 2030, we will end the sale of new petrol and diesel cars. We want to work with industry to make sure that we can get there really effectively. And obviously, you'll know that we're out to consultation, which is very much focused on how we support industry with the ZEV mandate and what happens in that period from 2030 to 2035. The previous government, the previous Prime Minister, really knocked confidence in electric vehicles by flip-flopping and changing that date. But we're very clear that it was a manifesto commitment. We will end the sale of brand new petrol and diesel cars from 2030.
You mentioned the consultation. The consultation is closed now. I can imagine your colleagues are sifting through quite a number of responses. What's your feeling? Do you feel that there's going to be some relaxation that the car makers are calling for in terms of the fines if they don't hit the targets for electric vehicles?
Well, look, we want to work with industry to help make this transition to electric vehicles. I know from talking to manufacturers, and I've done a vast amount of talking to manufacturers, large and small, over the last few months, that they're absolutely committed to making this change. They've invested a huge amount in the switch to electric vehicles, and we want to work with them. We want to put the UK absolutely at the forefront. We want, one of our central missions as a government is to be a clean energy superpower. That's very much part of our plan for change. And so we're looking really carefully at what manufacturers are saying, and at the way that we continue with the ZEV mandate. We know that whilst they didn't absolutely hit the number of pure electric vehicles sold, when you take into account the flexibilities that there are, they exceeded what was needed in the previous year.
We're seeing an increase every month when the stats come out from SMMT. We hear that there are more and more people are buying electric cars. but they're not private buyers, are they? They're business buyers who are taking advantage of the tax breaks that exist for business buyers buying electric cars. Now, you have said there are incentives. You've announced recently some more money to put towards incentives for van buyers, for people buying motorbikes, wheelchair accessible vehicles, cab drivers. What about the private buyers? Can you help them afford an electric car a bit more?
Well, look, whenever we're looking at incentives, we have to make sure that they work for the drivers, but also for taxpayers. And there are still incentives there. So for people who don't have a driveway, there's the opportunity to benefit from extra for grant there to put in a cross pavement solution when that's needed, and we'll continue to keep that under review because we want to make it easy for people to make the switch. And of course, we recognise that owning and running an electric vehicle, you can save up to £750 a year by making that switch, because they're very economical, because they're very efficient, and because there's lower lower costs of maintaining them, because they're really they're really good vehicles to own. So we have to kind of look at it in the round.
You talk about support for British industry as well. We're in a British-built electric vehicle. There are lots more coming down the line, but they're also a big part of the automotive industry is the small volume manufacturers, those that make under 1,000 vehicles. It's going to be really difficult for those guys. I know Lister, for example, have been very vocal. Is there going to be some sort of exemption from them in terms of going all electric? Will they be still allowed to make petrol or diesel vehicles?
Well, look, we've got some absolutely fantastic small and micro volume manufacturers, and they're often really at the cutting edge of technology. And it's right that they're exempt from the ZEV mandate. Is recognising the difference, the different challenges that they face. Obviously, part of the consultation was looking at what happens after 2030, and we're talking to them and listening really carefully, and that's part of our consideration as part of the consultation exercise.
So if your neighbour comes up to you and says, Minister, should we go all electric? What are the main reasons you would tell them to do it?
So I think there are a number of reasons. The obvious one is it's the right thing to do for the planet. It's reducing carbon emissions. I think I'd encourage them to give it, to go and try out an electric vehicle, because people find it smoother, quieter, pleasanter, safer. Obviously, we know that switching to electric vehicles is part of the solution to air quality, which is a big problem in our towns and cities, has a huge health impact, and people can save money. It really is a potential win-win, and great for the British economy, for British automotive, bringing skills, jobs and investment into our country.
Now, I couldn't have the Minister for Future Roads in my car without asking you about what is possibly the second most important thing for car owners and road users. Whenever I'm doing a phone-in on radio or TV or anything like that, it's always electric cars first, then potholes. We're on some pretty good roads, I think, here in Leicestershire. Not at home in Buckinghamshire. What are you going to do about the pothole crisis?
Well, I'm glad you asked me about that, because it is probably the number one issue when I go out and knock on people's doors and ask them what's the thing they want to change. Is they'd like to see an improvement to our broken roads. And we had 14 years of not having consistent investment, and it really has taken its toll. And that's precisely why, as a new government, we've come in and we've made a huge commitment. So from the 1st of April, local authorities will be benefiting from an extra £500 million for local roads maintenance. That's an uplift of 50% on the current year, and we are we're going to put some pretty good demands on them to report on how they're intending to use that money, so that people really see the benefit of us putting that extra cash in this year. And in the longer term, I'm very hopeful out of the spending review we'll see a longer term investment, because I want to get away from local authorities having to be doing reactive repairs to our roads. I want them to have a long-term approach, so that they're doing planned maintenance, and we don't have potholes in the first place. And I'm absolutely determined. It's not just for motorists, very important though they are. Potholes are dangerous for pedestrians and cyclists and bikers. So we really want to get this fixed. We want people to benefit from smoother, safer roads.
We're nearly at the station now, so we shall have to wrap up, but I have 2 other questions to ask you. This is a little bit like carpool karaoke. I'm not going to ask you to sing, but if you were in the ministerial Jag, what would you be putting on the rather good audio system in a Jag, I have to say? What would be your music of choice to lift your spirits?
Well, we talk about this in the department quite a lot. I think we should have our own Spotify playlist. You know, it might be Forever in Electric Dreams might be up there, Electric Touch by Taylor Swift, or even Electric Avenue. But if it were just down to me, I'm a bit of a country girl, so I'd be whacking up the Carly Pearce and Brothers Osborne.
Oh, excellent! I didn't think we were going to get to Taylor Swift in this conversation. I didn't have you down as a Taylor Swift fan,
I'm definitely
but
a Swiftie.
there's a bit of history there in the party, but we won't go there.
I've spent a lot of time driving my 3 daughters around with us all singing along to a bit of Taylor Swift.
Yeah, me too. Don't tell anyone. Final question, and now your colleagues in the back can help out with this. I always ask the people I chauffeur to rate me. I'm quite often rating their cars, so rate me as your chauffeur. How have I done? How have I done, guys?
It felt like a very smooth ride to me. I'd be giving it a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10?
Yeah,
What do we
5
think?
stars, 10 out of 10. 5-star rating.
5-star rating.
I've never had
Good to go.
such happy customers, but my Uber rating is going up. Let's hope. But Minister, thank you once again for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.